Tristan Keys pledges his commitment to LSU yesterday. He is obviously a 5-star, the number 1 receiver in the country, out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. A lot of connections to the high school that he is a part of, Hattiesburg High, there in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. As LSU Director of Recruiting Donovan Tate is an alum from there. And our very own Shay Dixon of On3 Sports is also a graduate of Hattiesburg High in Mississippi, which is where Tristan Keys plays his high school football. Obviously, you see the rowback polo. Here is a look at the one that you can win if you join our bracket challenge. It's Louisiana State and a little Sailor Mike action on there. Zoom in on that. This is up for grabs. So whoever wins our bracket challenge, don't forget to join it. I just put out the link on Twitter once again this morning. I think for the men's bracket challenge, you got about 4 hours to get your bracket in. So get it in this next 4 hours. And then obviously the women's bracket, I think you still have another day, but go ahead and join that one as well. Andrew Messina in the chat, that kid is using LSU. He will never make it to campus. Listen,
contraire mon frère.
I understand the cold feet or the inability to really feel good about this. Yes, the cynicism around it because of the entire Bryce Underwood situation last year. Even DeCorian Moore, Christian brought it up before the show. Just the way that these things have played out. I understand it. I promise. I was doing the radio show in Ruston on 97.7 Sports Talk with Sean Fox right after this commitment was announced. And that was the first question he asked me. He was like, should anybody be excited? I'd be like, of course. You can be excited about a 5-star committing to LSU. Because what that means is LSU is in the mix, right? Now, these verbal commitments don't hold much weight really in today's day and age, as it's March and signing day or early signing day is in December. So you've got 9 months before this will really matter. But what it's telling you is LSU's in a good enough spot right now that they're getting the commitment and they're going to be very much in the mix. Now, money's going to be involved because that's what happens. But that doesn't mean you can't be excited about a 5-star, the number 1 wide receiver in the country, committing to LSU. And don't write him off that he's not going to make the campus already. Let Mr. Donovan Tate and Brian Kelly and Cortez Hankton and Frank Wilson and this entire staff go to work and see what they can do. I would be much more concerned if this was a receiver out of Houston, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, or Austin, or a Duncanville receiver like DeCorian Moore. But I'm not as worried about the Mississippi schools and their ability, but it's still going to be a battle as time goes on. So I do understand the cynicism around it.
Yeah, and Hattiesburg High is closer to Baton Rouge than it is to a Mississippi State or an Ole Miss or Tennessee, who is believed to be in the mix. Like, not as far in proximity as people would like to think just because he's out of state. But LSU already was trending for the number 1 class in the country because of all of the talent in state.
Right.
I think you have 6 players in the top 100. But for Keys, I understand. Look, I'm as skeptical as anybody now. Literally, I've done this for a long time. I've been covering recruiting, or at least watching the eyes of recruiting for as long as I've been an LSU fan. So I understand it. Is there nary a time when your heart doesn't get ripped out? Never has it been as bad as been shown to me beating as it was by Bryce Underwood. You're like, oh, what? And then you realize, like, the story behind it of the $12 million a Godfather offer from the second richest man in the world, in America.
Mr. Ellison.
Mr. Ellison. But now when you start digging into LSU's collective and what they've raised and how much money they currently have, because of what happened with Bryce Underwood, that is what spurred this change. And then you have a story of a former LSU, can't even say alum because he didn't go to LSU. He's too smart for LSU. But he did go to Episcopal High, and he is worth, I believe, $4.2 billion. And he received a phone call within the month. No, before the transfer portal. And there was one voice on one end and one voice on the other. He called, didn't say hello, he says, can you help? And a fervent LSU fan, this man, said yes. And he has put his weight of $4.2 billion behind the LSU NIL collective. So that makes you feel like at least you're bringing a gun to a gunfight. You were trying to rely on relationships, on LSU's brand, and then when it came to $12 million, you can't compete. Now, and that's for a quarterback that's out of Belleville, Michigan, that's going to Michigan. This is a wide receiver that is within arm's reach of Louisiana, that has not only developed a relationship with the staff, but already had a relationship with the staff before it even started. And so to have all of the relationships in place with LSU, to have him commit the way that he did, kind of very ho-hum, very quietly, announces it after he'd visited a practice.
Right.
And he wanted to announce it that night, but waited until the morning to get all of his ducks in a row. And that's my only sense of optimism, is now LSU can actually compete on the NIL front. It may not still be, don't get it twisted, $12 million is $12 million. LSU will ever be in that ballpark. But with you have Michigan and Oregon, they're still going to be contenders in these fights where LSU gets the commitment, and it will come down to eventually signing day. But like you said, to be in the fight and be one of the schools listed, I don't think LSU is still the school that you use just to list. Right. I think that there's legitimate relationships there. Like I said, closer to LSU than any of the previous ones that have spurned you, whether it be DK Moore, obviously Bryce Underwood. I understand the cynicism, the skepticism, all of it, to where you don't want to get excited. But it's number one wide receiver in the country at a position that after this year, LSU's going to need wide receivers. And so it's a great spot to be in. Obviously, you get the commitment. And at the end of the day, LSU will always have the relationships, and that's what won out, at least initially. But now you do have the NIL backing, and that's a conversation they're much more comfortable having than they were before.
Yes, 100%. And I think it's always a good thing when a player of this caliber commits to your school, regardless. Because you saw us react to the Bryce Underwood news. I mean, the lights were shut off. We were screaming. It was it was not a good night for us either. But there still is some enjoyment you can get out of a commitment like this. And to me, I think one of the things that probably is the most in LSU's favor is Keys probably sat there and saw Jamar Chase sign that contract, saw the number come out of how much money there could be in the future for him if he goes to LSU. I mean, Daniil Hunter just signed he's now the second highest paid defensive end in the NFL. That's another LSU guy with more money than they probably could have ever imagined now in the NFL. And like Lloyd said, LSU now has the money to compete in these NIL arguments, that they once did not have. So I do understand the cynicism and the thought process of when he officially signs the paperwork, I'll be more excited. But for right now, verbal agreement means nothing to me. From Alex in chat, I understand it. Mark Cumby in the chat, I've lost all interest in early recruiting commitments. I'm glad, but always cautious about them till they actually sign. There's nothing wrong with that. Be cautious. You should be cautious now, because LSU and the LSU fan base was burned quite often in the last recruiting cycle with DK Moore, who LSU was his dream school, goes to Oregon. Bryce Underwood committed to LSU for almost a year and decommits a week before signing day. And then Cade Phillips. They've got a flip from Texas, the cornerback. He flips back to Texas a week before signing day. So obviously there should be some caution around it, but it's still a good win for LSU because this is a big time wide receiver, and if he gets to LSU's campus, he's going to make an impact. The On3 scouting summary from their rankings team says contested catch maven who looks like the top wide receiver prospect early in the 2026 cycle, has good size, measuring at over 6'2", 185, with good length as a junior, turned in a strong junior campaign, catching 58 passes for 1,275 yards with 14 touchdowns while leading his team to a deep playoff run. Excels in contested catch situations, elevating to come down with acrobatic grabs, hangs in the air and is able to contort his body into favorable positions, displays a huge catch radius, high pointing the football and coming down with one-handed grabs, high-level ball tracker with the ability to locate and corral the ball over his shoulder. I mean, this is a big-time wide receiver. And LSU will always be in the mix for big-time wide receivers. And what this show has shown you is LSU's in a very good spot. But, I mean, just burnt that man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is what gets people, I guess, you can go of optimism or pessimism because you see the talent. You're like, I would love to see that in the purple and gold. Because this is where the real hope start of like, oh God, you're like, yeah, that tracks as the number one wide receiver in the country when you actually see it, and then like that's when the talent wins out. You start to get a little bit more optimistic about, okay, the player's worth the hype, and you could see him making impact at LSU, whether it be Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Like they know all these names. It's not just. It's no longer the Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry's of the world, where you had to go back 10 years to say this is LSU's wide receiver U. It is a stable of
in the purple and gold.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Look, I'm sure he's gonna love those too. But like LSU has a stable of wide receivers that they can look to and turn to. Good Lord!
Oh my word!
And bring it and like sell you on. And I think that is a major selling point because at some point that like the brand does win, and that's what gets you in the door, gets you commitment. But at the end of the day, money talks, and LSU now has the ability to play in that ballpark. Because this article about Ross Dellinger that was put out 6 days ago, Holden Spott, a Harvard Business School graduate and Baton Rouge native, has mostly been known for working in the shadows as LSU NIL deal. Before a phone call, Holden, the voice on their side, can you help? And that has spurred a intense LSU NIL backing. LSU's collective spent roughly $12 million on its football roster of the last 3 seasons combined. For comparison's sake, the Ole Miss collective spent about $13 million on its roster last season.
Right.
So even athletic director Scott Woodward acknowledges that the program wasn't at the top of the heap early on, quote unquote, but it has begun to change with LSU's Kelly even offering to his $1 million match. The rest, multiple 7-figure gifts arrived. It was a last gasp to cap off the industry's 4-year NIL era of boosters funding rosters before the arrival of a July of revenue-sharing concept, the pay-for-play. The cash flow, a majority of it from 3 to 5 boosters, helped deliver a 16-man top-ranked transfer portal class in the country, retain stars like rusher Harold Perkins, and land a top 10 ranked group of high school signees and perhaps avoid a cataclysmic and historical happening. LSU of all programs being left behind. Yep. That doesn't tell you that they're bought in. And you've already seen it happen.
Right.
Like whether it was too late for Bryce Underwood in a game that you couldn't play, in a game that you'll never be able to play because you don't really have it. But when you have 3 billionaires, you do have a shot to keep the wide receiver that's ranked first in the country that's in Mississippi.
Yeah, no, and he joins a class of commitments that consists of obviously him. He's the number 1 wide receiver, number 1 player in Mississippi, number 3 player in the country, a 5-star committed to LSU. He joins Richard Anderson, who's the number 1 defensive tackle, D lineman in the country, number 3 in Louisiana. Aiden Hall, also out of Edna Carr, the safety. Bryson Martinez, offensive tackle out of EA, who is an absolute athlete. Kenny Darby, the wide receiver out of Airline. Ja'Kai Anderson, wide receiver out of McDonough 35. And Jalen Chapman, the interior offensive lineman from Warren Easton. So LSU right now has the number 1 ranked class in the class of 2026. With a score of 94.38. Last year, obviously, the 2025 class ended as the number 9 class. And if you look at what still LSU has in front of them just in the state with somebody like Lamar Brown, who's the number 1 player in the state, it could be a huge class for LSU, but they've got to continue to build. And I think they really are, like Lloyd said, they're in a good spot NIL-wise. Obviously have your, be cautious around these commitments like Tristan Keys, but be excited. Ryan Stadler, sorry to sound so negative, but the word commitment doesn't exist anymore in today's college football landscape. I understand that to an extent. Lloyd, do you have an idea of or Christian even, do you have an idea of what a better word could be for commitment in today's day and age rather than the word commitment?
Interest.
High interest.
Yeah.
Like solid interest.
Yeah.
Like
Crystal ball.
That's essentially what it means right now. Like, it's not exactly a commitment. It's a strong interest, and that's fine. To me, that's fine. And when you look at it through that lens, instead of saying
she super liked your profile,
there you go, rather than she didn't slide into your DMs. That's when that's basically signing the contract. But
so it's up to you to close.
She liked your Instagram story. I mean, that's a win, somewhat, and that's essentially what a commitment is.
Didn't like Ole Miss's story.
Right.
Didn't like Tennessee's story.
Unfollowed Ole Miss, followed me.
Yeah.
Works.
Feel like I'm in a good spot.
Yeah, we're in a good spot. Now, we're in a really good spot when I get the DM. When the direct message comes through, we're in a good spot.
DM with the phone number.
Kimberly said engaged but not married.
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, when you look at it through the lens of no longer saying, okay, they're committed, they're going to LSU. Because it is March 2025, and the early signing day is in December of 2025. So you've got a 9-month span where a lot of things are going to happen, right? So when you look at it without getting rid of the mindset of, which I think this is a good thing for LSU fans, that this whole Bryce Underwood deal has happened, because one, it's woken up the NIL, outcome for LSU. Two, it's kind of fixed our mindset a little bit of no longer saying, okay, they're committed, they're going here. Now it's, okay, they're committed. That's a good thing. They're interested, but the job's not finished. Seville says, didn't pop the balloon.
Yeah.
And then, it works. So that's essentially what this means. It is a strong interest. It's not a commitment, really a true commitment to the school. There's somewhat of a commitment, but it's really just an interest. And so we'll see.
I guess it is old, like it's old nomenclature, right? Considering that
Right.
the world has changed and the college football recruiting, any recruiting has really changed. You're not really, I wouldn't even say you're supposed to be committed to anything. Like, you could be committed for a year. You could be signed for a year. You could be on the team for a year and still be able to leave.
Right.
And so that's the world that you're in. If you want to, look, I still am of the ilk that, like, do I care as much about recruiting as I used to? No, because, like I said, been spurned too many times.
Yes.
But it's still hard. I would be more upset if there was a wide receiver this close to Louisiana and this close to LSU that wasn't interested. Like, that's all you can be, is put your best foot forward and hope that at the end of the day you get a signature. It's not like much has changed on that front. It just
Right.
Now it feels like it changes instead of a week before, it changes 24 hours before, 2 hours before. And that's where, who was it? Was it Caden Phillips from Texas?
Cade Phillips.
Cade Phillips. Like, those are the battles I think that you'll be able to win now.
Yeah.
Like, if it comes down to $1.5 million or $2 million, I don't think that bothers LSU anymore.
Yeah, no, I think LSU's in a much better spot. And like I said, there's reason to be excited about Tristan Keys, because he is, like you saw in that video, he's a heck of a football player.
I mean, it's still rolling.
I mean, that flip it back on because it is impressive. So it's exciting to see LSU get a commitment. It was a weird emotion for me when it came across the timeline, though. Like, when I saw the notification, I have my Twitter notifications on for Hayes Fawcett of On3, because he's always going to get that graphic out quick. It was a weird emotion that I felt when I saw it, because obviously there's a sense of, excitement. But, I mean, I was right there with you guys of, okay, never mind. Like, what? How am I supposed to feel about this? Is this really a good thing or not? And so, of course, I still put it out. And it was funny just to look at some of the replies and comments to the breaking news. See if I can find some of these. Ryan says, I don't know, man. I have PTSD, LMAO. Drake, I'll believe it when he's on campus. Homa Tiger, great news. We have seen this story before, only to get outbid eventually. That's all on Twitter. Let me see if there was any interesting Instagram comments.
Who's DJ Moore?
DJ Moore is the wide receiver for the Bears.
Right. I think he meant DK Moore.
Yes. Tam Massino the Great, let the bidding start. SB and Frenchies _ Rio, we have PTSD. When he in them pads, let us know. Marvion says, let us know when they sign. Let's see. Coach Tyler says we've seen this before. Let's see. Jacob Gillot says need the pin to hit the paper before I celebrate, but go Tigers anyway. I like that.
That's the only positive one.
Yes. Amir Mad Muhammad. When early signing day comes, I'll be happy. Until then, we are still recruiting him. Amen. Tyler Ledley means nothing until they are enrolled. Just a lot of lack of trust.
Right. That's where you are right now, right? Like that should be the common sentiment is,
right.
Oh, cool, but not that cool. Like it's like getting promised a Christmas gift, and they're like, well, I'm not going to trust it, so I'll see it under the tree.
Right.
And the paper's off.
There you go.
But good news nonetheless. And like I said, with the ties that you have to Tristan Keys, Donovan Tate, Shea, like I feel like he's getting his information from a pretty trusted source where he's an alumni there. And Tristan Keys obviously is of that same high school. Like they all went to Hattiesburg High, and Donovan Tate has helped there. Like they've been. This is the other big part, is in this area. Donovan Tate has been on the staff for the past few cycles, and he's helped land. This is all per on three. Helped land P.J. Woodland of Oak Grove, cornerback Tyler Miller out of Laurel, the offensive lineman, and also. Don't forget Cortez Hankton and Joe Sloan in all of this.
Right.
Like, they went to go visit. Even Brian Kelly went to go visit him. So, he's been a priority. Obviously, I think because LSU fans have been so out on recruiting, we haven't really been keeping tabs on stories like this.
Right.
And for good reason. It's hard to get excited. Like, it's almost, in my mind, like transfer portal recruiting, transfer portal is how I look at it in terms of, like, what to put my focus on. Because that's where LSU is kind of laid their path to success so far. At least for this third pivot, you're now focused in on the transfer portal and spending your money there. And I understand why they did it this way, because it was really your last shake to be able to raise money and spend it this way.
Yeah.
Because with revenue sharing, they're going to cut out some version of being able to like have a collective, but they're not really going to cut out a way to have a collective. But this is the last chance that donors could really seek out and pay for play. And so LSU went all in, and you saw that's what happened with the transfer portal classes. We continued to kind of ooh and ah over some of these guys. We're like, damn, this feels a little bit different than every other year. So LSU brought somebody from the portal.
Right.
Like you have legitimate dudes. Like you have guys that you could feel like can come. They might only be here for a year, but they feel like they evaluated the kind of the mindset, what they wanted out of LSU, as opposed to just to come grab a paycheck. But with that comes a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, but you have high-quality guys that want to come play for LSU and that see a vision for LSU getting them to the next level. That's the three things that you're selling, and now you can actually get into the conversation instead of hemming and hawing over $1 million, $1.2 million. That's where LSU probably sees their way to the door because, like, I don't want to haggle with you.
Right.
Like, I appreciate the offer, but they just sure, you offered $1.5 million, they just offered $3 million, and you're like, but we really see it's like, go.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to turn into, like, devaluing what I'm worth that another school is offering me, it's hard to continue that conversation. And 100%. Now with LSU being able to match and on top of, like, selling everything, like, that's what it feels like that's where they want to go to begin with.
Right.
But whenever you're getting outbid the way that you were, it's easy to see why somebody would take a little, like, more money.
Of course.
And that's kind of the same promises, even though you might have liked the school more or staff more. Like, who's the wide receiver that just happened? Texas Tech, 5-star, went to Texas A&M.
Oh, Micah Hudson?
Micah Hudson just left Texas A&M.
Yep.
So he's in the portal for the second time in 1 year. And apparently he has eyes back on Texas Tech because they had a billionaire that sold his oil fund to be able to help NIL.
Yeah. No, I mean, LSU is now in a, caught up with the rest of the, not everybody. They're not going to be able to get in.
They're in the arms race.
Yes, they are there. And the best thing LSU has is what was keeping them in the race at first, being obviously a cool university, having the names, the name brand, and the names in the league. Those things are still very, a part of LSU's recruiting pitch. Now they have the money to be competitive with these other places.
Yeah, that's what got you in the door. Now you can close the door behind you.
Yes, because, I promise you, these guys are seeing Jamar Chase, highest paid non-quarterback ever, Derek Stingley, highest paid defensive back ever. Daniil Hunter, second highest paid defensive end in the league. Joe Burrow at the time, highest paid quarterback ever. Justin Jefferson at the time was the highest paid non-quarterback ever. Now I'm probably Malik Neighbors will reset the market when he signs his. Jaden Daniels will reset the market when he signs his contract. Like, this is only going to continue to grow, and the recruits are going to see this. It's going to resonate because as much as $12 million in college over 3 years is nice, imagine being Derek Stingley and 23 years old and signing a contract with $89 million guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Only a 3-year deal, and he's 23. He'll be 26, and he'll get a 5-year deal. And
that's just as much money. Like, brother, that's going to play in the recruiting pitch every single time. And so LSU still has that argument. Now they've got some of the cheddar to be able to continue to fight back against in this arms race that's going to continue.
And
so
look at the recruiting landscape of the SEC, and look who's fallen by the wayside a little bit. This would have been before NIL, this would have been the same conversation, but in a different version of, oh, he's committed to LSU, but wait for him to flip to Alabama.
Right.
Alabama's not even on the table. Sorry,
Yeah.
Hunter Hall.
Yep. Sorry, Hunter. But yeah, no, I mean that.
Because this would be a guy that LSU would put into the boat, get him recruited, get him committed, and then you would start to see Alabama's turning up the temperature, and you're like, oh God, here it comes.
Yeah, I mean Desmond Ricks, like somebody like that's a guy that LSU felt so very confident
Patrick
in.
Surtain.
Yes, like, and at the final minute, Alabama swoops in and makes it happen. That the world has changed. So, let's see. H-Town Creole says, I'm happy if the kid sticks with his commitment, but can't blame him for getting the bag either. These kids are in the poor states and people crash out when they go for the money. Yeah, I mean, nobody's upset. Like, you can't get upset at the kid. Seville says $12 million in college is nice. No, 100%. But I mean, $12 million in college when I could go get $6 or $8 million in college and then turn that into $90 million guaranteed after 2 years in the league. That's pretty nice as well. So, all in all, you should be somewhat excited about Tristan Keys, the 5-star wide receiver, number 1 receiver in the 2026 class, committing to LSU, or showing his strong interest in LSU, if you want to word it that way. But I do understand the skepticism and the feeling of being cautious around things like this.